Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
So you're good. Like, let's see.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Wait, is it on?
Let's see. Yep, it's on.
Okay. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
I think. Do you want to walk around? Is that your hope?
You just stay here, and if people have questions, we'll go over to them right there.
All right, try that.
Testing, 1, 2. Oh, that's better. That's better. Okay.
The issue is that we took 4 inches here.
Okay.
So it has a little bit all the way to the back.
Okay.
This when you're talking.
Trying to get the back off.
Because the stone just kind of I didn't keep sure.
Okay. Okay.
Even when we Good evening. My name is Candace Frazier. I'm the rector here at the Episcopal Church of the Ascension, and I am delighted to welcome y'all and to see such a great turnout of women and those who might identify as women, even if they're wearing a collar in the third row. To hear Sister Monica Clare. I'm very excited about this evening and delighted that ECW continues to meet and have a vitality across our diocese. I think the importance of how women show up is unbeatable, right? I mean, there's a resilience that we all have and that we bring, and it's not just simply a resilience in what we do for the church or for God, but it is a resilience of spirit, a beautiful spirit that nurtures one another and nurtures our diocese in ways that I think are really important. So I'm really excited that this group continues to meet and to build one another up and hold one another up in particular ways. If you have hearing challenges, I would encourage you to move forward. You might notice these two speakers right here. They're the only speakers in the church. So they will push some volume out, but it is hard. The further away you are from the speakers, the harder it is to hear. So just a little FYI if you want to move forward. The amazing thing about Ascension is that the front pews are always full, which is not the usual typical Episcopal church, right? So I do encourage you to do that. It is, again, a joy and a delight to host all of you and to host Sister Monica Clare today. And I think Lori's going to talk a little bit more and introduce her in just a minute. I want to just offer some gratitude first to the women of the Ascension who did work so hard, especially Virginia and Elizabeth, in putting together some hospitality, a little wine and cheese after the talk tonight, the beautiful flowers, and have just done a really gorgeous job of just kind of sprucing the church up. Thank you all so much for all that you did for tonight, but all that you do for us all the time. I also want to, yes. You may have noticed, but if not, I'd like to call your attention to the windows where you will see an exhibit of boats. These are done by Cam Armstrong, a local artist, and she and I have conspired with a few other women to host an art and spirituality workshop called Cross and Currents. This workshop comes from Canterbury Cathedral in England. One of our members was there last year and saw the exhibit and found out about the workshops that they were doing there. And she brought it over here to us and asked if we might be willing to host it here. So we've been in conversation with Canterbury for several months now as we've been working on this workshop. They're super excited that we've brought it across the pond. We are super excited to get to offer it. Cam installed the exhibit this past week. I do encourage you to take a moment to check out some of those boats. There should be some flyers around in our track racks or maybe on tables just lingering around the building. Feel free to grab one. There's a QR code in there that you can scan to register, and it gives you some more information about the event as well. We would love to have you. Cross and Currents will take place in Joshua Commons, which is this building off the back of our property here on the back parking lot. So this is the front parking lot that comes into the church. Some of you might have parked down below and come up the stairs. Joshua Commons is the freestanding building there. But we would love to see you and love to have you, and you get to build one of these boats and take it home with you, which is, they're incredible works of art, so we would love for you to do that with us. The workshop is all about the metaphor of boats and water and journeying as a spiritual metaphor for how we travel through this life. And not just simply that we are all in the same boat. Our take is that we're all in different boats, but we're all on the same journey. We're all in the same storm. And so how we travel together, how we support one another, how our fleet works together is one of the ways that we're going to explore in the workshop as well. Just two quick items. Bathrooms are located on either side of the nave. There's a family restroom right over here with a handicap entrance to it, and then a men's and a women's restroom on this side, which are not handicap accessible. Finally, Waldo Garden is where our wine and cheese reception will happen. You can get there a couple of different ways. You can go out the doors and back down this direction, down the steps into the garden. You can also just go out this door, down those steps, or there's an elevator here that will take you down to the first floor and out to Waldo Garden. Again, we're delighted you're here, and I hope you enjoy the weekend.
It is my honor to introduce our speaker for this conference. Sister Monica Clare has quite an amazing journey, and I just have loved getting to read a little bit more and learn a little bit more about her once I was first introduced to her on TikTok. She has a TikTok called None Sense for the People, and I started watching that, and it is so good. If you haven't had the chance, and I know many of you probably aren't even on TikTok, I would highly recommend it. It's a great way where she engages more about what life is like being a nun, what questions people might have about faith, and it's such a sincere exchange. She talks a lot about just, they've got a cat and a dog at the convent now, which is awesome. I mean, they've had, but a new puppy. And what's the dog's name? Peach, that's right. So, but she shares a lot about just their journey at the convent too, because animals have a way of finding all kinds of places to get into trouble sometimes. So, but Sister Monica Clare started off more a traditional life. She was born in Rome, Georgia, and then had a chance to go to New York University, where she studied in kind of film. It was kind of more communications, things tied into that eventually led her to getting a job. She moved then to LA, where she was working in the film industry, doing photo editing and things like that, and was living that very fast-paced life was with a comedy group called the Grouplings. There's some famous people from Saturday Night Live that were part of that group, part of an a cappella duo in terms of singing. It was a duo, or was it two of you? Yeah. And so she, anyway, was this amazing life, ended up getting married, and there was still an emptiness, a longing in her heart. And so I think through all of that, she recognized really from early on that there was something calling her towards the church and towards becoming a nun. And so once she really explored that, it's amazing how God opens doors. And as time went by, she realized, although she had not grown up in the Episcopal tradition, it really was more about connecting with the Episcopal faith, that she then decided to become a nun in the Episcopal Church. And like most of you, I didn't know, I grew up Catholic and nuns were plentiful when I was growing up in school, but I didn't know that there were Episcopal nuns. So she's with an order out of New Jersey called St. John the Baptist, and she's now the Mother Superior, the Sister Superior there. And she'll tell you a lot more about her story, but I'm just so honored to get to introduce her, and I hope you guys do give her a warm welcome, Sister Monica Clare.
First of all, I have to make sure that you can hear me. Can you hear me back there? Okay. No, I'm getting some no's. Okay. Where my mic is. I think I might have to hold my mic closer to my mouth. Because I'm a low talker. So, okay. I have a very soft voice, so when I do these kinds of things, it always gets lost in the back, so I'm glad you can hear now. Thank you so much for the warm welcome that you've all given to me today. Felt like coming home for me, because even though I grew up in Georgia, my people are from Alabama. My ancestors came into Alabama in the early 1800s, around the late part of the first decade of the 1800s. So they were some of the earliest settlers in Alabama. Northern Alabama, and particularly Sand Mountain. Anybody know Sand Mountain? All right, that's my people, Sylvania and Boaz and all those wonderful places. So coming home always meant going up to the mountain and going to Decoration Day and going to family reunions on the mountain, DeSoto State Park. Our family, my mother's family, there were 8 kids, and her mother's family was 11 kids. My grandfather's family was 12 kids, so it was like a corporate picnic when we did family reunions. Those are some of the happiest memories of my life. And coming here and being among you is also a reminder that women in the church have always been one of the things that drew me to God ever since I was a child. It was the church ladies. The church ladies took care of me. They were sweet to me. Boy, could they cook. Oh my gosh. The best food I've ever had in my life. They were always so nurturing and kind, and their ministry in the church really drew me in and made me realize that God is nurturing and kind, and that God loved me through these wonderful church ladies. So you're all doing that in your ministries. Wherever you minister, you may think what you do is small, but it's really big for somebody like me. Some little kid somewhere is going to be grateful to you. So thank you for your warm welcome. I don't know how many people, I'm not going to take a test or anything to see how many people bought the book or read the book. You can be anonymous, but I don't know how many folks here have read the book, so I won't tell you the story of my life in that book, because you can read it and find that out pretty easily. I'll tell you how the book came to be, and then at the end I'll take questions. The last half of this is going to be questions from you, because that's the most interesting part. And you don't have to just ask me about the book. You can ask me anything you want, no matter how weird or cringy or kind of ignorant you might think you are. I've heard every question in the world. So I'll tell you how this book came about, and it really was one of those things where I really think of it as the story of Jonah and the whale, because when I entered religious life and left my secular life behind, I had this feeling that I was going to be this holy, solitary, completely invisible, very, very holy nun. And I was never going to be in touch with the world again, that I was just going to be a small sister doing small ministry invisibly. And I aspired to that sort of holiness. And of course, God said, that's not what I want you to do. When I first came to visit the sisters, it was right after 9/11, coincidentally, because I had planned my visit to them before 9/11 happened. And when I went to them and saw what they were doing, one of them was a chaplain at Ground Zero when it was still just rubble there. And I saw how much they had been affected by the events of the world at that time. I said, you ladies really need to advertise, because you've got something here that the world really needs. And they were absolutely horrified by that, because in religious life, they were raised in religious life to believe that you could lead a hidden life in Christ. That's part of your promises that you make. And so when I became a sister, I thought, well, that's it. I have to lead a hidden life. They did not want me to be on social media, because I joined in 2012. And the sisters are boomers, and I'm Gen X. So I had been around at the beginning of Facebook, the beginning of Instagram, because I was working in advertising, and we saw it as free advertising. So I told the sisters, you really need to zhuzh up your Facebook page, because they had a Facebook page, and it had like 4 followers. And I thought, oh boy, this is a disaster. And a friend of a friend was running it, and just sort of every once in a while, so it looked like nobody was minding the store. And so I said, can I get on the Facebook page? And they said, absolutely not. We can't be on social media because they can see us. If you're on social media, people can watch you in your pajamas. They can see what you're doing. They can see you through your computer, and they can steal all your money, which is true, but there are ways to protect yourself from that. But they were so frightened, like justifiably frightened about social media. They said, people will come here and break into the convent if we put pictures of it on. I kept saying, yes, there are risks, but you can protect yourself. And having worked in PR, I also know how to project a really positive, solid image, a brand out into the world that is going to be appealing and yet keeps our private life private. They still thought it was of the devil. They didn't want me to do it. So finally, after like 4 or 5 years, I talked them into allowing me to post the collect of the day on Sundays with a little picture, because I also do photography. I was a photo editor for 20 years. So I started putting photographs up. And then 1 or 2 of the sisters got on Facebook themselves. And that was all they could talk about. They love Facebook all of a sudden. So I thought, that's my in. So I started posting more and more on our Facebook page. When I became superior, there was still some resistance to social media, but I became superior of the community 3 months before the whole world shut down for the pandemic. Our ministry of hospitality, which welcomes over 2,000 people a year to our campus, our retreat house, our individual retreat ministry, classes and programs and workshops, everything went away. And I thought to myself, we got to go digital. We got to reach out in the world, just like churches did. Churches started live streaming their services during the pandemic, which brought in more and more people who couldn't go anywhere. We had a community garden, which we still do, which produces like 1,000 pounds of produce for local food pantries. We invited people to come to that garden and volunteer because they could have prayer outside. They could work in the garden outside. So that outdoor ministry plus our online ministry really saved us, because one of the things that I was afraid of was that people would think that we had died, because we weren't putting ourselves out there at all. We didn't have a public message saying, hey, we're okay. So I created a digital newsletter and sort of tied that in with social media. And in the very, very depths of TikTok, very, very depths of the pandemic, like probably 2021, a friend of mine who used to be my assistant when I was a photo editor said, you've got to get on TikTok. It's amazing. And so I said, no, that's for little kids. People dance on there. I'm not going to dance. I can't dance. And it's like pranks and blowing up cantaloupes and stuff. I'm not really into that. He said, no. There are a lot of old folks on there like you. And I was in my 50s. He's a young California dude. And he and his wife were both on there. They said, we'll be your friends on TikTok, so you have 2 friends. And so I thought, I am too old to learn another social media platform. I just had gotten the hang of Instagram, but I thought, this is in the depths of us not being able to communicate with the world. So the first video I made about, it was about the wild turkey that showed up and was attacking our cars and eating all the vegetables in the garden. Because I thought, well, that's pretty funny. You know, I want to make people laugh because we needed to laugh in the depths of the pandemic. And then I thought, you know, like 27 people liked that video. So I'm going to put another one up educating people about how there are nuns and monks and friars in the Episcopal Church. And at the beginning of the video, I said something like, this is a message in a bottle. I don't know how many people are going to see it, like 8 people maybe. But yes, I'm a nun, and yes, I'm not Roman Catholic. And it was very early, so I was kind of wooden and nervous and reading off a paper and stuff. So don't watch my early videos on TikTok. They're horrendous. But it was a learning curve. And being, you know, with my marketing background, I thought the best ideas are the ideas that we gratefully borrow from others. Not steal, but borrow as an homage. So I started doing research. I started watching a lot of TikTok videos, and I was very pleased to see a lot of progressive clergy, a lot of Roman Catholic brothers and sisters, and the Roman Catholic priests as well. I became, like James Martin, I'm a huge James Martin fan, and I started watching his TikToks, and I thought, this is a movement that is not taking place on any other social media platform. You don't see this many religious people and spiritual people making content. You see mostly makeup, and which is fine, but you know, makeup and jewelry and fashion, that's where those are skewed toward, because those companies that own those things, I happen to know, they are not there to entertain you. They are there to make you buy stuff. And so they don't push the religious and spiritual content because there's nothing to purchase except maybe a book or two. But they push the content that will make you go to the store and buy something. And TikTok wasn't doing that. It's because it's not an American company. It's about to be. But their marketing bias was towards making money from people who wanted to use products to endorse on there. You could take it or leave it. But the way that they pushed content out was they would show it to a few people, and if those people liked it, they would show it to many more, many more, many more. And it became this huge audience. For people like me who put a video of a wild turkey on there, I got like 450,000 views because the audience chose it. They said, that's really funny. And so they sent it to their friends and all that. And there was a lot of engagement in the comments, which is also really important. And little did I know that when I was putting these videos out there, that anybody would care or be curious about the religious life in the Episcopal Church. I thought, this is a niche of a niche of a niche. Like, it's just so specific. Nobody cares. But the demographics that I was looking at with my marketing background, most people who follow me are Gen X women who have either never been to church or they left the religion of their childhood because of religious trauma. And I have over 250,000 followers. 90% of them are those people. They're genuinely curious if there's another flavor of Christianity besides evangelical or Roman Catholic. They had no idea. And I get these wonderful messages from people who say, you know, now that I'm listening to your stuff, I really want to go to the Episcopal Church. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of the musician Harry Nilsson from the 70s. His daughter, who lives in Los Angeles, I was a fan of her account because she was putting up a lot of Harry Nilsson stuff. She wrote to me and said, you know, I'm really going to check out the Episcopal Church. And then she wrote to me again and said, I took my daughter, we really loved it. And I think, that's a win. That's a win for the Episcopal Church. So I started encouraging the other religious orders to do it, and they were like, no. They just would not do it because they're too shy or they have this hidden life thing going on. My sisters were not happy when they found out I was on TikTok because I was already superior, so I didn't have to ask myself for permission. So they felt like I should have asked them for permission. But I was saying, ladies, I know what I'm doing. You know, I'm trying to get vocations. I'm trying to friend raise, you know, bring friends into our midst and help people to know that we really have something that the world needs. I believe so much in the Episcopal Church. We may be fractious sometimes, we may have a lot of issues, and it's a leaky boat out on a stormy sea, but we are doing something that is so vital and so important for the world right now in this moment. And the more we put that message out there, we love you, you are welcome here. We are really, really trying to enact what Jesus taught us to do. We're not perfect, but we try. So that's what I was doing. And then I didn't realize that if you want to get a book deal, all you have to do is get over 100,000 followers on TikTok. That's all you have to do. Because all of a sudden, all these literary agents started contacting people who had a lot of followers on TikTok, and I was noticing that. Like, I follow a guy named Dan McClellan, who's a biblical scholar, his account is amazing. He deconstructs all the proof texts of Scripture and interprets them from a scholarly and historical point of view. So he got a book deal, and he said, it's because I had like over 100,000 followers. I thought, that's interesting. I do too, and I don't have a book deal. But all of a sudden, 3 different literary agents contacted me on Instagram, of all things. And they were in my message requests, which I never check. And I checked them, and there were these 3 inquiries from literary agents. And I thought, this is a scam. It's got to be a scam, because I'm very cynical about stuff like that. But I figured, all right, I'll give them the dignity of responding, and maybe I'll meet them on Zoom to see if they're like a wacko or something. So all 3 of them were very nice. There were 2 ladies who were boutique agents. They were their own company. And then the 3rd guy was a gay Korean Buddhist who was at one time wanted to be a Buddhist monk, named Albert Lee, at United Talent Agency, which I knew from having worked in Hollywood is one of the biggest talent agencies in the world. So I thought, this has got to be a scam. He's going to ask me for money or something. So So I met with him on Zoom, and he was legit. You know, I looked up his credentials and double-checked and everything. The nicest guy in the whole world, the biggest cheerleader, the most encouraging person I've ever had in my life. He used to write for the Village Voice, and now what he does for UTA is he brings in spiritual and social content that the world needs right now. He's really committed to that sort of thing. And then after I talked to him, I was like, that's nice that he's so excited, but it's never going to happen. Like, no publisher wants a book like this, because who cares? But he was going, you're really off base here. Somebody's going to want this. So then he went out to lunch with somebody from Penguin Random House, and her name is Leah Trollburst, and she's young enough to be my child. But she's such a sweet, lovely, spiritual person. She said, I want this for Penguin. They didn't even have to put it out to the publishing house. And I just couldn't, every step of the way, I was like, God, are you serious? Like, how is this happening? This was not supposed to happen. I was supposed to be invisible. But God didn't want that. So just like having to go to Nineveh in the belly of a whale, I had to go in, and I was like, oh my God, now I have to write a book. I've never written a book. I don't know how to do that. So they paired me, luckily, with one of the best editors in the world. And I had all these essays and blogs and things that I had written over the years, and we cobbled those together. The first draft of the book was 1,500 pages. So she and I were like, oh no, because then it's a 10-volume series. And we didn't know what to do, because the other editors at Penguin kept saying, could you expand this scene, and could you expand this character? We're like, oh no, it's going to be 20,000 pages. So finally, we got some really good editors who were just laser sharp in what they wanted to cut. And I didn't try to hang on to anything. There was one story from my childhood that I stood up for and said, no, I want that in the book. So they said okay on that one. But there were 100 more that didn't make it into the book. There were a lot of people that didn't make it into the book, a lot of friends along the way. But in the end, we decided that we had a really kind of lightweight story that moves along pretty well. And all those big stepping stones are there. So that's how it came to be, much to my shock. And until the day that they sent me the galleys in the mail, I was thinking, this is not going to happen. It's going to fall through. It's not going to happen. But I'm just going to humor the team because they are so excited. I'm just going to pretend like I'm excited too. So then it was released on April 29th. And I've gotten some really good press, really good reviews of it. Nobody's panned it, which is fantastic. And most gratifyingly, every time I meet people, they say, you know, I read it all in one sitting, or I read it overnight because it's an easy read. So thank God for that. I was afraid it was going to be laborious. Yeah. So now, I don't know how long I've been talking, but I wanted to open it up to questions. Go ahead.
What did your children think about you becoming a nun?
Good question. I don't have any children.
Okay.
Thanks be to God. I was married.
Yes.
That's a good question, though, because I was married for... I was married for 2 years. That's right. I was married for 2 unfortunate years, but it led me to therapy, which led me to joining a convent. So we can all thank him for that. Good question.
You talked about receiving funding
Mm-hmm.
the Episcopal Church, is
That's
that
right.
correct?
Yes, the question is, does our community receive funding from the Episcopal Church? We do not. Most people don't realize the difference between us and the Roman Catholic communities is that when we were founded, and I'm going to go over this because tomorrow I'll talk about the history of Anglican religious communities. And part of that is the financial difference that in the Roman Catholic Church, most of the time, the land and the assets and everything are owned by the church. And the church does help, not a lot, but they do help religious communities. And our communities have always been, since the 1840s, 50s, when they were reestablished in the Church of England, independent. They were mostly founded by aristocratic people, women and men, who had family inheritances that they sunk into these communities. And we've always owned our own buildings and lands, so that's how we've survived financially, is buying and selling land. We're in the real estate business a little bit. So, yeah. Yeah. Thank you. The question is, she saw me on the Today Show, which was really surreal, because when I worked in PR, we used to coach people on how to be interviewed in the public. And I never thought it would be me. And I also had worked in radio where I interviewed people for 2 or 3 years. And so I had always been on the other side of that, but I had never really been on camera being interviewed. And the other part of it was that it was live. And I thought, okay, I've been on live radio many, many hundreds of times, but this is different. Am I going to look weird? Is my mother going to say my posture was bad? Like she usually... So it was very surreal, but it was also a really exhilarating, joyful experience. Like they sent a car for me to New Jersey because I was thinking, I'm never going to find parking in New York City. And it came out of this other situation where I had been interviewed for the Sunday paper, which is Maria Shriver's paper. I highly recommend it. And they interviewed me, and then after that, they said, Maria's interested in talking to you about writing a book. I said, you're not going to believe this, but I already wrote a book. So then when she was on the Jenna Bush show, Jenna and Friends, it was Maria Shriver who suggested me as a guest because she had read my book. And I was so grateful to her because her and Jenna Bush are role models for me, because if you look up how much philanthropy that they do and how much influence they have, I was just so thrilled to meet them. I was afraid I was just going to embarrass myself. But they were so kind and warm and welcoming to me. Jenna Bush, the daughter of a United States president, walked up to me. She's so glamorous. She's like glistening. I mean, she's so gorgeous. She walked up to me with her phone case that has cats on it. She said, I knew I could make you feel comfortable if I showed you some cats. I have cats on my phone. It was the cutest thing. And they were so enthusiastic about the story of the book, which really, it's like, okay, God, I could get struck by lightning tomorrow and go straight to heaven because my life is complete now. But I'm a big supporter of what they do and how they put this positive message out into the world. So it was a beautiful experience. One of the cameramen handed me a medallion, like a Roman Catholic medallion for St. Raphael. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I was on a high for like weeks. Good question. How did my sisters feel about that? They grudgingly accepted it. I think once they saw that the publicity wasn't bringing these hordes of people who hate us, because that's a big fear with Episcopal religious communities, that people are going to react very negatively to us, especially people who've been abused by nuns and monks. I can understand the religious trauma there, but they saw that wasn't happening. So by the time I got to the Today Show, they were, some of them were super excited, and some of them were like, oh, well, have fun, but it was a good experience. Yep. Yes, that's a great question. Did therapy help me get into the spiritual journey? Yes, I'm one of those people who thinks everybody should be in therapy, especially the people that I talk to my therapist about. And my mother, after what happened to her in her life, she went into therapy grudgingly, and then she learned that it saved her life. So when I became very depressed in my 20s, she really kind of pushed me into therapy. And thank God she did, because it was during my marriage that I went into therapy, because I was really unhappy. And I was emailing, because email was just starting to come about then, like 1997, 98. I was emailing Roman Catholic nuns, and I was saying, I'm really miserable in my marriage, and I know this sounds crazy, but I really still want to be a nun, something I've wanted since I was a little kid. It's never gone away. I couldn't marry it away. I couldn't have a career and make it go away. And I asked the sister, this is in the book, I asked a Roman Catholic sister, do you think the Roman Catholic Church is going to change its mind about women clergy, reproductive freedom, and LGBTQ inclusiveness? And she said, probably not for another 500 years, but you sound like an Episcopalian. And I said, oh, that's terrific, but they don't have nuns. And she said, oh, yeah, they do. So that changed my life. And then the end of my marriage was so traumatic for me that it brought up a lot of other stuff that had always been there that I hadn't been dealing with, because I was an overachiever, perfectionist, high-flying career, tons of friends, but I was deeply depressed. So I got into therapy. And the funny part was my therapist kept saying, I was like, this whole thing with guys, I've only had one boyfriend and I've never been successful with guys. Do you think it's because I'm called to be a nun? Do you think God has put some kind of shield on me? And my therapist said, no. And I was like, really? Because I think that. Yeah. And I started looking at my authentic self. I got into Al-Anon, 12-step program for families and friends of alcoholics and addicts. That saved my life as well. I highly you all qualify. I used to think, oh, I don't qualify because of this. We do. We all qualify. So going to those meetings really, really helped me to understand who I actually am instead of who other people want me to be. That's the thing that all of us struggle with all of our life. Like, what do people project onto me? And I thought, I'm a person that likes to space out and read the Bible and pray. So I think it's perfectly suited for the career that I wanted when I was a child. So, and I really thought, by that time, I thought I was too old because I had been married. I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to be accepted into an order. Episcopal orders, when they were reformed in the 1850s, they were mostly widows, people with grown children. They were older by census, so it wasn't a big deal for me to join at the age of 46. 50 is our age cap, but we really do take it on an individual basis and see who is trainable at 50 and who's not, because we do tend to get set in our ways. But therapy helped me to define. I took the personality tests, I took the Enneagram tests. And I thought, oh, wow, advertising is like the last possible thing I should be doing. As an introvert, as a highly sensitive person who has tons of sensory issues, working in a loud, bright, stressful environment was like the last place I needed to be. The only part of me that drew me to that industry was creativity. I loved the creative side of it. It was really fun, and it really fed me. But the other side was killing me. So it's important to find out who you actually are. That's what I always tell people. Take the tests. They may seem silly, but they're good. Okay.
What's your daily life like? And
Good question.
how are you interacting with people?
We, Episcopal orders have traditionally been small, around 12 to 20 sisters, all along. So ours is 12 right now. We have 2 sisters in nursing homes. We are both an active and contemplative order. We're Augustinian. People think we're Benedictine because they think we're so uptight, but we're actually Augustinian. And so we do pray the daily office. Our community was founded in England in 1852, so we use the day hours of England as a basis for our lauds and vespers. We wake up at 6 a.m., we pray the Angelus silently in our rooms, and we have prayer time, which could include reading or whatever you want to do, whatever is prayer for you, from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. And then we have lauds at 7:30, and then we have Mass right after lauds every day, except Monday, which is our day off. And then we have work time, we have breakfast and work time, and then we have terce, which no religious community in the world except us still says terce. It's like a 20-minute service at 9:30 in the morning. And then we have noonday prayer at noon. We usually have a meal after every big prayer service, which means we eat after noonday and then we eat after vespers as well. But after noonday, we have a work period, and then we have vespers at 4:45. And then after vespers, we have recreation, which means we all have to go in the library and sit in a circle every single day and talk to each other, which is, you would be amazed at how hard that is for a bunch of introverts. But we are forced to do it. It's a very ancient tradition that's team building, basically. And then after that, after recreation, we have our evening meal. Then we have private prayer time again. And then we have Compline at 8 o'clock. So that's a pretty full day, every single day. And people say, you know, if you're in chapel 6 times a day, how do you get anything done? But we do. We have these 2 work periods that equal about 4 to 5 hours per day. But somehow, when you're praying the daily office and you're giving God your time will expand, I promise. It really does. I never thought it would, because I used to work, I would sit at my desk at work from 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., just about every day, and didn't do anything else but that. And I'm doing probably twice as much as I did when I worked in advertising in less time, so it's this miraculous thing.
What type of work do you do? Growing the food for or
Yes, we do have a lot of different ministries. Our flagship ministry is our retreat house. We have 27 rooms, and we have a retreat house manager and a cook and some cleaning staff over there. So it's staffed by seculars. It used to be staffed by sisters, but they sort of aged out of all that stuff 20 years ago. And the others who are younger don't have the time because we're doing a lot of preaching and teaching. We lead retreats. Most of us are trained spiritual directors, so we have like 8 or 9 clients usually on average. And we also, one of our sisters, we also are encouraged to have our individual ministries. And one of my favorite ones is Sister Margot Elizabeth, for 27 years, I think, has been leading pilgrimages to holy places in England, Ireland, and Scotland. And Wales, that's right. So she goes 3 times a year, and she has a retreat on Holy Island, Lindisfarne, in February, every year. So that's a great ministry. It's brought a lot of friends into our midst. We have had sisters who taught Sunday school, vacation Bible school, confirmation, things like that over the years. We don't have any of that going on right now. Most of our ministries in parish, most of our parish ministries are around adult forums and preaching and retreats. I lead a lot of quiet days and retreats. I'm going to go to Seattle in March and lead a retreat. Got a retreat center there. The rector there is an old friend of mine who I knew when I was in Hollywood. He was the brand new baby priest when I was at All Saints Beverly Hills. So, yeah. So now he's all grown up, and he invited me out there. So, you know, it's a small denomination, so we all come around to each other at some point. But we have a lot of different varied ministries. Oh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a mixed bag because it's a very ancient tradition, and the ancient thrust behind it is to edify each other. The conversation should be edifying. But some of our sisters love to come in there and say, you know there's a bomb pointing right at New York City right now. And so they try to bring it down, down, down. Or there was a horrible car accident. So we have to say, remember, we're supposed to be, you can pray for those folks, but we're supposed to be lifting each other up. Because that's the tendency, you know, when you look at the paper or you look at the news, it can be pretty depressing. But we do try to, and we try very hard to connect with each other. We do have conversation monopolizers. We found that some of our sisters, we realized that the sisters who have the worst hearing loss are the ones who monopolize the conversation. Because it's too hard for them to listen, so they'd rather just keep on talking. So, and we are like family. One of them will look at the other one and go, okay, you've been going on and on. You need to shut up. And so it's not pretty. We're not all very well behaved, but we do know, like in our community, one of the things that's really benefited me as a leader is that in my marriage, I went through marriage counseling. So I do work a lot in terms of the tools that I got from marriage counseling. Like, we can't not argue, because that's weird and it's unhealthy. We have to argue in a healthy way. We have to have conflict to move forward. And some of the sisters back away from any argument, and some of them, boy, they like to start a fight, like 5 times a day. But the fact that they're so energetic and so driven is what makes our community really great, is that they won't back down, they won't. There was at one point, I don't know if I should be saying this, but at one point the bishop of our diocese, who shall remain nameless, wanted us to give him our school property after the high school closed down. And the superior said, no, I'm not going to do it. And he was like, but I'm the bishop. She said, I don't have to be obedient to you. I'm not a priest. So we're not giving you our land. And he was really angry. But she's that kind of person. She stands up for us. I do tend to be a person who stands up for my sisters if anything threatens them, especially during the pandemic. I was very protective of them because that's my job, is to keep them healthy and happy, whether they like it or not. And so we had to come up with all these pandemic protocols, which we came up with together. We said, what can we agree to protect each other and remind each other that we're not just I. We always have to think in terms of we. So. Yeah. 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 They weren't. That's a good question. She's asking, do people tend to think of us as non-persons, like the two-dimensional cardboard cutout nuns or the plaster statue nuns? And we do have moments where, you know, if somebody comes and visits us, we have lots of visitors all the time. And occasionally 2 of the sisters who've been living together for 60 years, having the same argument, one of them will start yelling at the other one, I've told you this 1,000,000 times. And they think, well, sisters shouldn't argue. And I'm like, well, we're just people, you know, and we have feelings, and I have had things. People confuse us with like Amish people, because I had somebody tell, in New York City, I had my cell phone out and I was looking for something, and they said, are you allowed to use electricity? People were shocked that we have cell phones, which we didn't until like 2016, so we were late to the party on that, but still, you know, it's still shocking for me. You know, some people don't want me to be using a cell phone or to be driving. Like, we have a bunch of Priuses. We're trying to make our footprint small, our carbon footprint, so people are like, well, you drive an awfully fancy car. And we're like, no, we're trying to save money on gas and not use gas. So people have certain judgments that they place on us. We also have to be really sensitive to people who might have been abused by nuns, which happened all too often back in the old days before psychological screenings. And there was a lot of abuse in the parochial school system, so we have to be gentle. Like, I was walking, when I was working at St. Mary the Virgin, we were measuring the candles at the front of the church, which the candlesticks are like this tall, so the candles are way up there, so you don't just have a ruler to measure them, you have a yardstick. So I'm walking through the church with a yardstick, and I was like, oh no, people are going to think I'm going to hit them with this. So we have to be conscious of things like that. When we're out in public, we have to behave ourselves. We can't argue with people in the comments on Facebook, and we do not engage in political put-downs or anything like that in public. we do individually. But we try to be a good witness to Jesus Christ wherever we go. You got to take your cart back and put it in the cart thing. You can't just leave it. You can't yell at somebody in traffic. Sorry. We can drive terribly, though, because people don't expect us to drive well. So. No.
What are the ages of some of the younger sisters, and do you get much interest still in people joining the order?
We do. I mean, we like to maintain sort of an optimum number of 12. And it's been very interesting. Since the pandemic, the Gen Z generation, the millennial generation, they were brought up volunteering. That was part of their school credits. Like, you have to volunteer. So they've become very service-oriented, and people are like giving up on the younger generations. But we see them coming to us asking to volunteer. Most of the people who volunteer in our community garden are teenagers and college students because they want to be of service. They want to address food insecurity. We always have about 5 or 6 women sort of orbiting around us, wondering if they should be nuns, and we try very hard not to push them into it. I always tell them, nobody's going to say, we want you to join, because we want it to be on them, if they feel right about it. We also have an associates program. We have over 400 associates, so a lot of people who think they're being called to the convent become associates and oblates. And there are a lot of women who came and tried their vocations and left. I call them our exes. And in the old days, you couldn't talk to them or be friends with them anymore, but we are now friends with people who've come and left, because we don't see it as a failure. If you come and you don't stay, you were meant to be there for a certain time, and that's it. It wasn't a failure on our part or your part. And we do have, like in Coroa, which is the conference of all the religious orders in the Americas, we have 16 active, viable communities, and we have probably 125 members. We have just started having a new members conference, which we just had at our retreat house, because there are enough new members to have a conference, which is something we're really rejoicing about. There are enough postulants, novices, first professed in all the communities to come together and have some workshops and meet each other and really connect, thanks to the internet. So, because they have Zoom meetings. We also have Zooms with inquirers to help them with their discernment process, which is really helpful, because in the old days you had to come visit in person, or you just talk to somebody on the phone, or it was letters. But now our vocations director and a lot of the other ones will meet with inquirers monthly and talk them through their discernment process. Most people who are called or think they're called are not really called, so we understand that not everybody's going to join, but there's always a win somewhere, Yep.
Well, I was curious, what draws you to this area of ministry? What is it overall different ministries? What do you think drew you and what draws other people?
That's a good question. What drew me to religious life instead of other areas of ministry? And all I can say is it's something really mysterious that drew me ever since I was a child. I like order. I like routine. I like to be surrounded by beauty. And I've always been, you can't tell from this, but I'm a very quiet, introspective person. And the silence really appeals to me. Also, personality-wise, it appealed to me in terms of focus and silence and purpose. I really wanted to have that prayerful purpose in the middle of my day. And I knew that I couldn't maintain a good structure of prayer every day by myself. I have to live with people, and we all have to hold each other up in that. Because everybody in my family said, why don't you just become a priest? I was like, you don't get it, because it's a different vocation. And St. Anthony of the Desert said, a monk away from the monastery is like a fish out of water. I always felt like a fish out of water in the secular world. Even as a priest, that would be too much in the world for me, because there's something about the convent that really draws me.